Chad Hauer. I'm wanted by the FBI and Interpol for 16 years. They've tried to extradite me twice from two different countries, have failed both times, and they're still after me. They know where I am, and you know, what can I say?
Amassing nearly 80,000 followers on TikTok, Chad Hauer has been sharing his story and how for 16 years he has been embroiled in a complicated legal battle around the custody of his son Aris, who goes by the name Alex. When you get to know the facts of this story, you would be very much forgiven for thinking this is the plot of the latest Hollywood film, but this is very much real life as Chad fights tirelessly to clear his name. To fully understand the international nature of the story, we first need to head back to the early days of Alex's life and how Chad was enjoying a successful career as he moved up the ladder in the tech industry. Here's Chad with more.
He was born, I was working in Tennessee, so I was home every day, and there was nothing unusual about that. A few years later, I did take a job where I started traveling, and I would be gone I'd be gone for a week and then home for a week and gone for a week and home for a week. Sometimes it varied a little bit, but in general, that's how it was. I'd be home every other week, and I'd work from home the week I was home, and when I wasn't, I wasn't. And when I was with Microsoft, I had a territory of 85 countries, so I was traveling a lot then. And I had a rather high position at Microsoft, and I would have easily been at the vice president level or so by now. Everyone else, all my other peers are basically vice presidents, and it was a very senior position.
Chad separated from Nancy, Alex's mother, in 2001, and their divorce was finalised the year later in 2002 when Alex was 6 years old. Alex remained in the United States while Chad lived overseas for work. It wasn't long, however, before the legal battle that continues to this day first began.
Agreement was I didn't want to disrupt his schooling and everything, so I decided, okay, well, let's leave him in a school, let's see where his friends are, and I'll come in the summers and I'll come on holidays and whenever I can, I'll come visit. And even during that, she just frustrated. I would, I'd fly to the United States to spend like a few weeks there, and we'd rent a place in Tennessee to stay, and she wouldn't be there when I came to pick him up. And so it started basically right away from the very get-go. She was interfering with custody. And then in 2000 and let me think here, 2004, I'm pretty sure. You can look in the records. I called and they would never be there. It was very hard because she would never answer the phone. She would never let him talk to me on the phone. And one time I called and he picked up because she was outside. And he says, "We're moving." I'm like, "Okay, where are you moving to?" And he says, "Cherry." And then all of a sudden the phone hung up. She came in the house and hung up. So we filed a court order basically requesting that she appear before the court to let us know where she's moving. Because in the US, you can't just move. When you move, you have to go to the court. You have to give the court 30 days notice. And she didn't do that. So the court issued an injunction telling her, listen, you can move, but you can't move till you come before the court and tell us where you're going and make sure that the custody agreement, everything transfers. And she didn't. She just disappeared. She moved about a 10-hour drive away from where he was born, where he lived, and where he grew up. We had no idea where she was. I had to fly to the US. We had to hire a lot of practices to try and find out where they were. We finally found them, and they made her go back to court in Tennessee. The judge told her, he says, listen, if you do this again, I'm going to transfer full custody to the father, and I'm going to send the child to live overseas. So don't pull this garbage anymore. And then she did again. So the judge not only warned her, but then he gave, he transferred custody to me. So long story short, he moved overseas with me in 2005. And then, but she had some visitation. I mean, I bent over backwards the whole time to make sure he always had contact with her. So summer of 2006 came and it was time for her summer visitation. So I had to go to Seattle for Microsoft. So he and I flew to Boston. And in Boston, I put him on a separate plane. I paid for an escort to fly him to Pennsylvania. And then I went to Seattle. I never set foot in Pennsylvania. And then the end of 2006, summer visitation, she didn't want to return them. So she filed a bunch of stuff. She made a bunch of stuff up just out of thin air. And even the Pennsylvania judge is like, no, the father's got custody. And he had the police take him away from her because she didn't want to give him up, put him on a plane and return him to me in Europe. So he's in Cyprus. September 2nd or 3rd, he arrived back in Cyprus, 2006. And then somehow they said I kidnapped him a few weeks later. But the last time he was in the US, the judge had to have the police take him away from her and put him on a plane.
The conflicting orders between Tennessee, where Alex was born, and Pennsylvania, where his mother Nancy was living, has made this case even more complicated. Tennessee had given Chad full custody of Alex from the 2005 order, but due to the charges filed in Pennsylvania, they said that Nancy had temporary custody. However, there were many question marks surrounding the information within those Pennsylvania charges. Here's Chad explaining more.
But the Pennsylvania judge, when he took jurisdiction, which he deferred twice before, including 2 weeks before, he declared my son was born in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, you're in the UK, so you may not get this portion either, but in the US, all custody is state level. So there's 50 different jurisdictions. They said I'm from Titusville, which is a city I've never lived in my life. And yeah, and even Tennessee, until he was 18, exerted jurisdiction. In fact, the order from Tennessee, when I got custody, because she had caused so many problems, in the order it says that Tennessee will hold jurisdiction until the child's 18, because that's where he was born, that's where he's lived, and that's where he's raised.
It was 2009 where the kidnapping charges were brought against Chad, and this resulted in his 3-month stay in a Bulgarian prison after his arrest when he was visiting the country on a work conference.
Pennsylvania just said that she had temporary custody. There were never any kidnapping charges from the state of Pennsylvania. So then they took a bench warrant, which is a failure to appear. They had no jurisdiction to order me to appear. Kidnapping charges came in 2009 in May, and it was in a closed-door secret hearing. So if I kidnapped him, why did they wait 3 years to apply charges? I mean, aren't kidnappings urgent? Armed police officers showed up at my hotel and took me away. I knew it was kidnapping, international kidnapping, because on an Interpol warrant, those guys don't get in the details. They get the headline, and the headline said international kidnapping. So they treated me like a terrorist. That's why they called me the American Taliban. It was international news. Bulgaria, it was headline news of the Bulgarian papers, headline news of Pittsburgh, Erie. It was in Japan, South America. It got picked up by the Associated Press, by Reuters. It was everywhere. You would have thought they caught, Osama bin Laden's cousin. I went through the courts, and the courts basically found that the charges were baseless, and the U.S. appealed it. So we had to go to the highest federal court, where a panel of 3 judges went through the whole case again, affirmed it, and denied it, and they let me go. And the U.S. still tried to capture me on the way home. They were mad at Bulgaria. In the end, I had help from a former FBI agent and the help of former Bulgarian officials, because they had realized that for 3 months they had been their time wasted on bullshit by the U.S. government.
While Chad was in prison, attempts were made to bring Alex back to the United States, but ultimately failed. But it poses the question, why was Alex listed as a missing person if the authorities and Nancy knew where he was? The picture above shows Alex's missing person poster on the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children's website, but this was removed following a viral video. Chad explains more.
His poster was up until July of this year. And the only thing that got his poster removed, and he's 26 now, mind you, the only thing that got his poster removed was me doing a TikTok with 1 million views in a day and tagging Nick Mick, and they took him down within hours. We've had attorneys contact them numerous times. We've had people even contact them now and ask them, hey, this child's, he's no longer missing. He's no longer listed as missing. Can you tell us why he was removed? They won't answer. Despite him being listed as missing, the U.S. renewed his passport in 2019. So how does the U.S. Embassy renew somebody's passport in 2019 if you're missing? He's been in and out of the U.S., 10 times in the last year, even before his poster was taken down. But yeah, when he would travel, sometimes they could flag him and they could delay him like, hey, you're missing, and he could miss flights. And now after he did that publicity, we got huge publicity in the Caribbean again. It got to the point he was being recognized sometimes when he traveled by people in public. Like, yo, you're the missing kid. And so he's now basically shied away. He says he doesn't want to do any more interviews because he's sick of the publicity. He's even kind of changed his hairstyle and stuff, and he's utterly sick of it.
The charges against Chad in Pennsylvania have been dismissed. However, the federal charges are still active, meaning the case is, to simply put it, at a standstill. The future remains unclear for Chad and his family, including his ongoing medical issues, which he cannot receive the standard of care he needs on the small island of St. Kitts.
Because Pennsylvania has dismissed the charges, but they took it federal, and the feds won't drop it, even though they know I had full custody. I've said since 2009 that publicity was the only thing that would ever get us out of this. But then I got really sick. Basically, after I came back from Bulgaria, within a few weeks, I passed a kidney stone and was in the hospital. And I got sicker and sicker and sicker. We flew a surgeon in 2015 who did surgery. I was supposed to get better, but I didn't. And I've just been absolutely crippled ever since, unable to do anything. And then we kept fighting in court, made slow progress. And, then TikTok became something other than a dancing app because I was trying on Facebook for years and I was so sick. There was from July of 2021 until about March of 2022, I could barely even talk. My jaw was locked up and so I couldn't do anything, and that's why it's been so hard. And I just said, fuck it, let's try TikTok. People think it's bullshit, but then when they look in and I answer the questions, everybody realizes that it's real, especially considering I have documentation for everything. But now I'm to the point everybody's like, yo, we get it, you're wanted. I'm like, yeah, but you're not who I'm trying to reach. And so it's like, until I get news coverage, I just got to keep banging. And it's just so hard because most days I can barely even sit up. This is me on an extremely good day. And even now I'm having hot flashes and I'm in an air conditioned room and I'm barely able to sit up. And so when I only get a day like this, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, it's really hard for me to even make good TikToks because I can't sit up and write a proper script or edit it. My hands shake. I can't move things around on the screen. So I'm just basically trying to do the best I can on TikTok. And it's just tough because I can't even make proper TikToks. And TikTok was where I went because every other platform I'd have to type, I'd have to chat, and I can't do that. TikTok, I can just pick up the phone and start filming.
Chad is often asked, well, why don't you just turn yourself in? Here's Chad answering that question once and for all.
Even if I do turn myself in, they will hold me in prison for 2 or 3 years awaiting a trial, and they'll dismiss it before it reaches trial. But then when you come out, they put you on probation for another 2 to 3 years, during which time you can't leave the country. My wife is not a U.S. citizen, and I have 2 kids still under 18 living here in the Caribbean. So what, I'm supposed to just hang out and live on the streets for another 3 years while I'm on probation? Maybe I can live in a homeless shelter. I haven't seen my mom in over 10 years. My mom is blind and in a hospital bed. And, I don't know if I'll ever get to see her again the way things are going. I mean, I've had family members die that I haven't seen. And it's just, I have no, I don't want to. I mean, people say, you're trying to, no, I'm not trying to get to the US. I live in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I lived here before any of this garbage started. I have kids born and raised here. I still have 2 more kids under 18.
You can help Chad by emailing your local media organisations. It really doesn't matter where you live. The more coverage this story gets, the better chance of a positive outcome for Chad. Follow Chad on TikTok at the username above. Like, share and interact with his videos. We can all help Chad get the coverage he so desperately needs.